Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of All In with Art Stapleton, the New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton, and we are here in Cleveland. Final score. Boy, you Giants fans really thought 11 seconds in, this was going to be another long day, huh? Well, it was a long day, but it turned out with the result you wanted. 21-15, the New York Giants won a game, and really, at this point, saved their season. A lot of season left to play. We know the NFL is a week-to-week league, but on a short week, going to play a team that beat you, I'll do the math, 89-17 by last year combined in two games. That's the Dallas Cowboys, including 40-0 at home. You're seeing that team on Thursday night. Now, we'll get to them in a second. They're not faring too well at Jerry's World today against the Baltimore Ravens. But the Giants off the schneid, they get their first win, and really what you need to say out of this whole thing is that this team finally showed some guts. They showed some guts, they showed some heart, and they showed a resiliency that really hasn't been here since Brian Daboll's first season in key games against Baltimore, Green Bay, and London, even the end of the Titans game in which they got a little lucky. Now, I mentioned that because Brian Daboll in his post-game press conference revealed why today was special for him. And he spent most of the time talking to someone, not the quarterback. Well, yes, of course, he talked to the quarterback. But in key moments, he heard a special voice in his life. So it's his grandmother who raised him. 3 years ago, on September 22nd, she passed away. And it was a gut punch for Brian Daboll. And it was during the season when he was in Buffalo as the offensive coordinator. And it still means a lot to him to this day. So coincidentally, ironically, whatever you want to say, you come back, and all I could think about was 2 years ago in Brian Daboll's first win, he talked about his grandparents and how they both passed away within weeks of one another and how emotional it was. And everybody remembers Brian Daboll taking the chain out and talking about the chain that he wears for his grandparents, who are essentially his parents who raised him up in Buffalo.
Very good. What's up, guys?
What's up, Dabes?
Brian, what do you think the key was to this win? That's a normal NFL game. It was competitive. Showed a lot of resiliency on the road, particularly how the game started. This is the third-year anniversary of my grandmother's death, which today, the 22nd, she raised me, and I was kind of giving her the business after those first two plays, like how you got in store for me. But the guys competed. I was proud of the way they competed. It's a good football team. They gave defensively, they're a good football team. Thought we got into a rhythm, made some plays early in the game, stalled out a few in the second half. But at the end of the day, made a play there at the end to seal it. And Motor did a great job. But there's a lot of ebbs and flows in the game. Some fumbles, fumble again coming out in the second half, fumble we got to take care of. But a lot of resiliency from the guys in uniform in the room. So I'm proud of those guys.
Describe the emotions today for the Giants. After those first 11 seconds, you couldn't have picked. I wrote and talked about worst-case scenarios for this Giants team. You found the worst-case scenario 11 seconds into the game. You lost a coin toss. Dexter Lawrence says, damn, and you could hear it audibly in the stadium. They get the opening kickoff. Eric Gray fumbles. Then first play, Deshaun Watson up top to Amari Cooper on Tay Banks. And look, I've seen a lot about Tay Banks here throughout the game. Tay Banks is going up against legit wide receivers. Yes, he's got to win some of these balls, but he's still a very young player. And the reality is he was in pretty damn good position against Amari Cooper on that touchdown. And just Cooper's footwork on the sideline really beat Banks twice on big plays today. So there were times where I think Tay gave him a little bit too much cushion, but you're talking about Amari Cooper at his best is one of the elite receivers in the league. Now, he has not been off to a very good start, so you knew the Browns were going to look to find him early. And they did just that. Watson to Cooper, 7-0, 11 seconds in. And all you thought about, and I'm not lying, in the press box, all I thought about was, I can't believe this is how this game is going to go. I spent all last week talking about the Giants find a worst-case scenario, and now they just one-up themselves. And we all knew going in that it was one of those things where you have to keep the Browns down early. If they get out of the gates like they did against Jacksonville last week, the game flips. Then their defensive line could come after the Giants' offensive line. So with 11 seconds gone by in the first quarter, the Giants kind of adopted this new mindset. It was F it. And they used a little bit more colorful words than that, but we'll keep this a family show and a family publication at NorthJersey.com and the record. But the reality is that Dexter Lawrence talked about it after the game. Jason Pinnock talked about it after the game. It was this idea of move on to the next play. Don't dwell. You've got a lot of young guys on this team. Do not dwell on the negative. Pick guys up. Move forward. Try to make plays. And when you talk about making plays, there were two huge things today, I thought, that changed the momentum of this game. Well, actually three. Two made by Malik Nabers, one made by Brian Burns. I mean, Dexter Lawrence was unblockable. He was unbelievable yet again today. And to see Dexter kind of standing over a backup center on this team and kind of pointing. I mean, we all saw it last year in the Minnesota playoff game, 2 years ago in the Minnesota playoff game, the idea that, you know, when Dexter knows that they can't block him, you know, he's a Hall of Famer. I mean, that's the reality of it. If you cannot block Dexter, he will wreck your game play to play. And that's what he did today. He was everywhere. He should have had 3 sacks. He only had 2. And the official score, I still think they're cheating him 1. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a stat change. That was on the play on the intentional grounding that was on replay assist. At first, the officials on the field said that Deshaun Watson's throwaway reached the line of scrimmage, and he was out of the tackle box, so it wasn't going to be intentional grounding. They had a replay assist buzzed from New York. They basically told him, no, the ball didn't reach the line of scrimmage, and they corrected the play. Dexter was the one who chased down Watson and essentially knocked him down as soon as he let the ball go. So I still think he's getting a 3rd sack. We'll see. He had 2 sacks anyway. Just a tremendous game for Dexter Lawrence. But the 3 plays that I think changed the momentum of this game, 2 were my Neighbors, 1 was on Brian Burns. The Malik Nabers sideline catch over the defensive back, taking it essentially off of his helmet, was just an unbelievable play. And, you know, Neighbors talked about it after the game. We'll get to Neighbors and his video at his locker just in a couple seconds. But that play and then the second touchdown that Neighbors made, the catch in the far corner of the end zone for the second time. And if you're a Giant fan, yes, you were going in 0-2, but now for the second straight week, you scored a touchdown at the end of the first half. It's amazing. Really, if you're a Giants fan, you're not used to seeing this. They haven't been able to do that since Eli was in his prime, essentially. And to get that score before the half, and then they held on to it. It was 21-7. But those 2 plays by Neighbors changed the complexion of the game. Also, Brian Burns' strip sack just changed everything on that play. He gets his first sack as a Giant. He hits Deshaun Watson's hand. We'll get to that in Burns' video in a second. But first off, let's go to Malik Nabers in the locker room, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Malik and his impact on this Giants team.
Are you ready? Are you basically ready for the ball in any of those big situations?
Yeah, I mean, every time I feel like, I need the ball in my hands when it's time to get, first down, 3rd and long, 3rd down and short, 4th down. So I feel good, that my team, expects me to have the ball in my hands on 4th down and 3rd and long.
What did Daniel say to you after that catch on the sideline that you were boxed out?
Oh, they was just like, good play. He was like, I told you if it's you or nobody. I was like, yeah, I told you, just give me a shot.
He told you it's you or nobody?
Yeah, he told me if I throw it up like that, it's me or nobody.
You see the replay of it yet? Have you
Nah,
looked at
I never looked at no plays yet. I'm excited to.
What did you think of Dable going for it on fourth down in the first quarter?
I knew he was gonna go. I knew it was coming. When I seen us out in the field, I'm like, I'm getting the ball. We repped that play in practice 10 times, and he was like, look, if we call it, I trust you to go get this first down. And I was like, okay, cool. So I knew it was coming to me already.
So there you have it from Malik Nabers. A very good interview, and one thing I didn't include was I asked him point blank, at the end of last game, and I wasn't trying to be Debbie Downer or throw some cold water, but I said last week you said it was going to take a while for you to forget the drop, to move past it. And he said, honestly, I'm still not past it because every time I talk to Jaden Daniels, I'm going to hear about it. So that's the competitive nature between those two. But I think the quote from Bobby Okereke earlier this week is really resonating, and Dexter Lawrence said the same thing too. Malik Nabers went a long way by apologizing for his mistake last week and how he cost the veterans a win and that they're relying on him and they're giving him trust. And the fact is, the veterans all look at it. They know what Malik Nabers is. I mean, he's carrying this team. He is the energy. He's the juice. He is what this team desperately needs. And when they look to Malik Nabers, he makes a play. And Brian Dable looks to Malik Nabers. In the first quarter, the Giants go for it on fourth down in their own territory. They give Nabers the ball on a jet sweep, gets it. Malik Nabers basically said, look, I want the ball. I know I want the ball, but it's not an ego thing. It's I can make a play thing. And it says a lot for who he is as a player already. Check out this stat. He is the first player in NFL history, yes, NFL history, to have 20 receptions and 3 touchdown catches in his first 3 games. Think about that. The great receivers that have come through and gotten off to unbelievable starts. The first guy I think of is Randy Moss and what Randy Moss did as a rookie. The fact that Malik Nabers has now surpassed everybody is pretty amazing. It really is amazing. Got to give Daniel Jones credit again today. He made the throws that he needed to. I'll give a little apology to Daniel Jones. The throwback play that they tried setting up deep in the end zone, I said on Twitter that Daniel Jones put the ball up for grabs. Well, he did put it up for grabs, but his arm got hit by a defender. And if his arm doesn't get hit, he probably gets the ball to Theo Johnson, and who knows? Brian Dable said afterwards he thinks Theo might go the distance on that throwback. They thought they had a great play call there. So instead, the ball's fluttering up, and Malik Nabers turns defensive back, goes back to his days in high school, and picks up a pass breakup, essentially. Not in the stat sheet, but he breaks up the pass and allows Jones to get away with no interception. It was a play earlier. We all saw the interception that Daniel Jones threw. I don't think that was Daniel Jones' fault either. Now, I didn't have a chance to ask anyone about that because so much happened after that play. But it looked like to me that it was an option route for Theo Johnson, and he saw the play one way, and Daniel Jones saw the play another. Daniel Jones threw it behind Theo. He thought he was going to break out. He actually broke in, and it went right to the defender. Ronnie Hickman, North Jersey, DePaul grad, Ohio State. He made the pick, but then it was wiped away. So didn't happen. Those were huge plays. All right, so let's go to Brian Burns and this defensive front. Now, I thought it was interesting. Everybody's going to look at this game plan and see the way the Giants played and say, boy, they came in with a completely different, almost a Wink Martindale-esque game plan. They were so aggressive, so much more aggressive. The reality is they were allowed to be aggressive when they got up 21-7. And Dexter Lawrence said afterwards, it was a little bit of an adjustment, that we adjusted our game plan as the game rolled on. So they put more pressure on Deshaun Watson when they saw Watson. Essentially, the Browns had abandoned the run, which was crazy considering you saw what the Giants did against the run last week. Deshaun Watson just is not a good football player right now, and let's just get that out of the way. I tweeted this, and I'll say it now. One of the funny things coming on the flight yesterday from LaGuardia here, there were a lot of Giants fans. As we land in Cleveland, the pilot says, "Go Browns." And the Giants fans that were decked out in Giants garb kind of just all collectively booed. And then a fan sitting behind me basically shouted out, "Yeah, I don't think so. Your quarterback's worse, and you pay him double the money that we do," which I didn't check the money statistic, but they're right about being worse. Deshaun Watson could not carry Daniel Jones's water right now, and that's the reality. I couldn't believe that they didn't go to Jameis Winston at times in the second half here, the way Deshaun Watson played. But anyway, the Giants, get this. Now, there's a little symmetry here. The Giants had 8 sacks. As I told you, they should have had 9, and I still think they will when Dexter Lawrence gets that 3rd sack. Unless I've completely misread the rule, I remember back in Super Bowl 46, Justin Tuck got a safety and a sack when Tom Brady was called for intentional grounding in the end zone in Indianapolis. So why doesn't Dexter Lawrence get that sack? I understand if a guy just drops back and just throws the ball and gets intentional grounding, but Lawrence was right there. It's essentially like when you get a holding penalty, the guy, in that situation. So 8 sacks. That's the most for the Giants. Ready for this? Since 2014. Tom Coughlin was coach, and the Giants had a dynamic rookie receiver from LSU, Odell Beckham Jr. Today, they have Malik Nabers. And at times today in the first half, Manning to OBJ looked a lot like Jones to Nabers. Again, I know it's gridiron blasphemy to compare Daniel Jones to Eli Manning. That's not what I'm doing. I notice nobody has a problem, I'm sure, comparing Malik to Odell, but the way the connection worked, the idea that the quarterback has complete trust in the receiver, and that's the way things play out. And I thought it was interesting that that's how Malik Nabers talked about it after the game, and that, you know what, Daniel Jones is going to trust him. Just throw it up and trust me. And that's what Malik Nabers said in the summer. That's what Malik Nabers said last week. And Malik Nabers atoned for that drop last week. Now, yes, it's frustrating. You wonder what ifs. If you're the Giants and you look back, if you only had a kicker, if you could only get off the field on defense, if you didn't have that phantom defensive holding call against Drew Phillips, Brian Burns makes that sack, then all of a sudden maybe you win that game and you're sitting at 2-1. It is what it is. The NFL is a week-to-week league. You are not 0-3, you are 1-2, and you're going into a home game against a Cowboys team. The last I checked, they are losing 28-6 on their home field, and it's going to be 1-2 versus 1-2 with the Cowboys and the Giants. So, again, maybe a little different story this year. Cowboys licking their wounds. Giants feeling good, carrying some momentum out of today. So let's get to the Brian Burns interview in front of his locker, and then we'll come back and wrap up the show. And let's go to Brian Burns today. Played through the groin issue, said he was fine, said he worked it out pregame, just wanted to be sure. And he said that to him there was no doubt that unless he couldn't get out there on the field, he was playing today. And he certainly didn't hurt them, that's for sure.
Man, this is a part of, being on the outside. You necessarily know what's going on the inside. It's all, he said, she said.
What about hearing on the road the whole team who their quarterback?
I didn't hear that.
You didn't hear that?
No, I didn't.
But could you tell he was getting
frustrated, yeah, for sure. I mean, because he was getting a lot of hits on him. A lot of people was in his face, and, so yeah, he was getting frustrated. Yeah.
Brian, what do you think of Malik and some of the plays he makes on the other side of the ball?
Kid's special. He's showing y'all week in, week out. He's special. I just kind of hope he stay on that track. Stay on that track, stay doing good, and really embrace that position he's in.
Was that your plan all along on that strip sack to go after his arm? Like, did you see it? How does that develop?
It's kind of just instinct. When you're coming around the edge, I felt like he was getting ready to wind up and throw. So I just aimed. I waited a little bit and aimed for his arm. Got the ball out.
Glad to see Elijah jump on that one.
Yeah. That was a big play.
Would you say
All right, so that's Brian Burns. So we got you Dabes, we got you Malik, and we got you Brian Burns video from the locker room. Let's end this show this way. I talked to Wan'Dale Robinson, and he said on that last play, I saw this happening. I don't know if it came out on the broadcast, but as Devin Singletary was ripping down the sideline, I believe it was a 43-yard run, before he slid, Wan'Dale said he was screaming out loud, "No mas, no mas, no touchdown." So I said to him, why'd you say that? That's the call in the huddle, which is kind of interesting. I had never heard that before. Now, that may be a common thing, but the way Wan'Dale talked about it, he almost made it seem like it was on a punt, when the punt is away from the returner, and the returner screams out either poison, 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 or Peter, 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 which are the two commonly used words, which means get the heck out of the way, don't run into the punt that's now going to be bouncing on the ground. Wan'Dale Robinson said when they got into the huddle to start that last drive, the call was no mas, and everybody knew that meant if they let you score, don't score. You think back to when Ahmad Bradshaw, again, Super Bowl 46, he scored the reluctant touchdown that turned out to be the game winner, but it gave Tom Brady the ball again and to really put a scare into everyone there, because the angle on TV looked a lot different than the angle from the press box, I tell you that much. Still think Rob Gronkowski would have had a chance to catch that Hail Mary. But the Giants ran into those problems, I believe it was last year, if not the year before. Saquon Barkley didn't get out of bounds, and they kind of hurt themselves. He did get out of bounds and didn't stay in bounds. So Singletary slides down. I know fantasy owners are pissed that Singletary didn't score the touchdown. And I've seen this, that the idea of, well, what's the big deal? Singletary scores, they're up 2 scores, so what's the difference? Well, you won the game. If you don't score, you win the game. You know where the game is at. You have no timeouts for Cleveland at the 2-minute warning. That's where you're at. That's it. You take 3 knees, you're done. Game over, win over, you win the game, and that's it. You're the Giants, and you want to tempt fate? No way. Didn't we live through that last week? Didn't we live through that the year before against the Jets? Again, yes, you would have gone up 2 scores, but do you really want to take that chance? No. So you win the game, and that's why Singletary slid inbounds. They run the clock out, and now the Giants are sitting at 1-2. Look, nobody's throwing a parade at MetLife tomorrow morning. Giants still have a lot of work to do. But you have to appreciate the way they fought back today. This was not an easy defense to play at home. Go look at the numbers. I'll try to get the numbers. I don't have them in front of me. But there was a compare and contrast before this game about how good the Browns are at home versus how good the Browns are on the road. And on the road, not good. At home, very good. Save for the week 1 game against the Cowboys when they got their doors blown off. They go down to Jacksonville. They beat Jacksonville down there last week. I think if you're the Giants, you come out of here, yes, there's concern with calf injuries for Drew Phillips and Adoree Jackson. You've got to worry about how you're going to play the slot. What's going to happen now if, CeeDee Lamb is going to be in the slot? What are you going to do? I'm not worried about Tay Banks as much as the fan base is on social media. I think Tay Banks had some pretty good coverage. He got beat by a very good receiver. Sure. Do you want Tay Banks breaking up some of those plays? Absolutely. I think the Giants got a little bit of a lucky break with Cooper going up for that pass on 3rd down, hitting his head on the field. He had to come out to get checked. And on that 4th down, he was not on the field, and it was actually Cedric Tillman who dropped that pass, the crosser over the middle. I still think Tay Banks had pretty good coverage, but in that situation, he's got to develop now ways to play the ball. I think that's a big thing for Tay Banks right now. He's in good position. There was a play that I know fans were pointing out on social media that I saw popping up in my Twitter feed. The idea of Banks lost Cooper, I guess it was in the third quarter. To me, they were playing zone. He dropped back into his zone area. It looked like Cordell Flott, who had moved from the outside into slot, into the nickel, did not drop into a zone, that he stayed in man or he went to the wrong spot. So that's why it created a void for Amari Cooper. That was not Banks' responsibility. And that's really the only time Cooper was wide open. I mean, but you're talking about a very good wide receiver in this league, and Tay Banks is going to have those ups and downs. People forget, Corey Webster, he took his lumps as a cornerback. And, he's one of the top 100 players in the franchise. He's a two-time Super Bowl champ. Now granted, Tay Banks, first-round pick, you want to see him develop here. But we're 3 weeks in, and he's seen very good wide receivers. Terry McLaurin, it's going to continue next week if he moves inside to face CeeDee Lamb, but we'll see how that works. Calf injuries, again, for Adoree and Drew Phillips. We'll see what happens. Calf injuries are tough, especially on a short week. So, well, that's pretty much where we're at. I think, the Giants offensively, the offensive line, they hung in there today. Andrew Thomas had a battle on his hands. Myles Garrett, from what I sense here in Cleveland, now I know he's going for an MRI tomorrow, but I sense that Myles Garrett likes to kind of play the theatrics. Kind of what the Giants players used to say about teammate Jason Pierre-Paul. He'd be down on the field and he'd stay down an extra 10 seconds to kind of milk the crowd a little bit. Come on, get up, JPP, that kind of thing. So Myles Garrett, I'm sure he's banged up a little bit, but that's not an easy matchup. You're talking about the reigning defensive player of the year. And for the most part, Andrew Thomas got a little banged up himself. He had to get his left ankle taped. But I think the Giants did relatively well considering everything that they were up against today with that Browns defense, especially falling behind early. I think they did a pretty good job. So, again, was it pretty? No. Was it perfect? No. But it was exactly what the Giants needed. And the resiliency and the resolve can only help this team moving forward. At 1-2, maybe they quiet some of the criticism at this point. The run does not get any easier, Cowboys, than at Seattle, then come home for Cincinnati on a Sunday night. But the reality is this team saved itself a little bit. And you don't know what the NFL is going to be week to week, as I said. So appreciate everybody tuning in and watching our post-game show and following all the coverage on NorthJersey.com. Again, we got a short week this week. Giants have calls tomorrow in practice, in person on Tuesday. Probably no practice, just Dable and locker room. And then Wednesday off, Thursday night, Dallas Giants. Likely, let's see what that score is. I'm guessing it's still 28-6 in, looks like, the fourth quarter, just start of the fourth quarter. Cowboys have the ball in Ravens territory outside, basically in the fringe area. So we'll see what happens. So it'll be interesting. I think the Giants saved their season today. How long will it stay saved? Well, it's just a matter of what happens next week, what happens the week after. But make no mistake, Malik Nabers is a star. You have a star, Giants fans. And for what Daniel Jones did week one, the last 2 weeks, he's played winning football. He has. That doesn't mean he's going to win a Super Bowl. That does not mean that he's going to play out the length of his contract. It just means that maybe get off of that for now and enjoy some of the players that you have on this team, because you do have some players on this team. Not a lot, not a ton of elite players. Enjoy what Dexter Lawrence is doing. Enjoy what Malik Nabers is doing. Still have criticism of Brian Burns. Brian Burns, one of the best pass rushers you have, paid like the best one, and clearly one of the best in ascending in the league at 26 years old. Dropped into coverage and should have had an interception today. That's how good potentially Brian Burns can be for this team. So that'll wrap it up for me here in Cleveland. Appreciate it. Final score, Giants 21, Browns 15. And the Giants are 1 win, 2 losses, head into Thursday with a little momentum. Let's see how much Cowboy fandom is taking over MetLife on Thursday and see if some of the Giants get out there and represent a little bit, especially with the Cowboys getting their brains beat in the way they are with the Baltimore Ravens. Again, for Paul Wood, my producer, I'm Art Stapleton. Appreciate you watching this week's show, and it was a fun one. It was always entertaining to watch this team. You never know what's going to happen, like I said, week to week. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week, probably Thursday night, post-game. We'll see if we can squeeze in a pregame preview podcast before that.